On this episode of Still Loading...
Mr. Sonic! Mr. Sonic!
I don't know any Mr. Sonic, but it sounds like you need help.
Everything's terrible! Santa retired!
Santa retired?
Yeah, and he put Robotnik Claus in his place. And Robotnik Claus sent me to a robot factory. And I escaped, and his robots are after me and... Watch it!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. This is coming out, we're recording this actually in November, but this is coming out in December. December 20th should be the date. It should be the day that this just got out, the day you're hopefully listening to this on. Today on the podcast, I have a first-time guest, an old friend of mine from high school. We've known each other for years, and he is joining me to talk about Sonic Christmas Blast. And to break this ridiculous Christmas special down with me, my friend Jordan Coons is on the podcast. Jordan, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Merry Christmas, everyone. All the leaves are down here in the great state of South Carolina, where I happen to be recording this from. So it's not quite, and it never feels like Christmas down here. Obviously, we went to school together, so we both know what the northeastern winter is like, but it doesn't quite feel like Christmas down here ever.
I mean, the South, it's forever spring or summer.
Yes.
Or something like that.
It
doesn't get too cold. So let's dive into this. I don't really have much else to like. There's not much. I mean, there's a lot to say about this, but there's. I guess. How do we describe this Christmas special? I'm sorry I subjected you to this. Have you seen this before? Let me start with that. Have you seen this before?
I think once. I don't remember seeing it as a kid, but I definitely did come across it before this assignment. So. Yes, once before, but never before that, especially in learning that this was actually the series finale for the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. I didn't know that until I looked that up today. This was the last...
I did not know that until you just told me right now.
This was the last episode of that series. So I never saw it growing up, I don't believe, but one other time before, to answer your question quicker.
What a bad way to end the show. I mean, maybe the show wasn't great to begin with. I don't know. I didn't watch it as a kid. Did you watch any Sonic cartoons as a kid?
Yes. So this one in particular, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, was always on at about 7 in the morning, which is when my brother was up for elementary school. I was a PM kindergartner, lucky me, when this show was on. So I remember watching it in the mornings when my brother went to school, and then I went to school in the PM. So yes, this one, but not the Sonic Sat AM, which is the other one, more dark, more edgy humor. I actually have that on DVD and ended up watching it later on. But this series in particular,
that show's awesome.
It is great, yes.
The dark, edgy one. So I actually had the first two episodes of Sonic Saturday, Sat AM. That's what because it was Saturday in the morning, right? Yeah. That's why they call it that.
You don't know really what to call it because of that. I think it was just because it was Sonic the Hedgehog, but it was on Saturday morning, so the fandom kind of just called it Sat AM now, yeah.
I had the first two episodes of that show on VHS as a kid, and I watched that so often. I'm amazed that thing. I think it still works. I don't know if we still have it, but last I checked, it still worked, which is crazy. And no, this Sonic. What was this? Sonic and Friends. What was this cartoon from? I forget already.
This was called Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. This ran.
That's what it was.
Probably off the top of my head, 93 is when it started. Here I am gonna wiki this right now. See if I'm right. It ran. Come on now. Hey, I'm right. December 3rd, 1993, till the Christmas special. This aired on November 24th, 1996. Where were you when? So, yes, this was...
I was 7 years old.
Yep, I was 6.
Probably not watching it.
Correct. As established, I wasn't either.
It just... I don't know. This cartoon compared to the gritty Sonic Saturday one is so... I don't know what happened. It's weird, though, because I believe some of the characters in this, at least from what I saw in this one episode, this one Christmas thing, I haven't even seen any of the other episodes for The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. But Sally is a character in the gritty Sonic Saturday morning one. And Sally's not in any of the games, as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure she was created just for the show.
Right.
And
You're
so it's
absolutely
interesting
right.
how the gritty one created a character for it, and then it transitioned over to this new show like it was canon or something like that.
And only for this series finale episode, I have it in my notes here, WTF mate. She doesn't talk. The only voice line that she has is a gasp at the end when presents
when she
fall
gets a
on
bunch
her.
of presents.
Yes. This shows how important women's empowerment was in the 1990s. Clearly.
my God.
Sally was just there to take abuse from Sonic. What a shame. Sad.
Well, I mean, the whole thing, the show begins. There's two plot lines with this. There's an A plot line, which is the majority of it, and a B plot line. The B plot line is so inconsequential. It's Sonic is agreed to get a present for Sally, even though they agreed that they wouldn't get any gifts for each other this year, because last year Sally got him this really awesome ring that had this blue lightning bolt on it. And they pay a lot of attention to it right off the bat, so you're kind of like, okay, how is this going to come back? Oh, it comes back, and it's stupid as fuck.
I didn't know if we could swear on this, so...
Yes, we can.
Maybe I should have gone with... What the fuck, mate? Then she was in the Sad AM series. She's miscolored. I think she's like this bright fuchsia pink. And in the show, she's like actually brown, like she should be in the Sad AM series. So and not only that, Josh, you brought up a good point that SWAT bots were also not a thing in the AOSTH series, and nor was Robotropolis, which was also a thing in the Sad AM series. So if anything, this was a bridge, I guess. But
that happened at the end of the show, though?
It was like this was the only time Sally existed in the AOSTH timeline, which was the last episode ever. And she didn't speak. So clearly, I don't know how she got this message across to Sonic that she wanted all these presents, because she doesn't talk.
It was all done off camera, because,
Yes. Exposition.
No, so Sonic and Tails are going to Robotropolis to get Sally a gift, and Tails is like, no, but what about Robotnik? He's like, well, we can just duck in, grab some stuff quick, and we'll be out before they know it. In the meantime, the actual main plot is you find out that Robotnik has kidnapped Santa. You don't know this at the beginning, but I mean, you pretty much know it because it's a kid's cartoon. And he builds a robot imposter to pretend the robot to pretend it's Santa, and then give over the reins of being Santa Claus to Robotnik, and he calls himself Robotnik Claus. I have some words about his outfit.
I have a lot too. Can I stop you quickly though?
No, go
for one discrepancy. Never in the AOSTH series, as I remember it, it was always this really abstract art thing, but the citizens of Mobius were never human. Why the hell are they human now? I don't get it. Again, there's this weird bridge thing that like they took so many liberties with the final episode of this series, and now all of a sudden we've gone from all animals to now humans. And I have something to say about Green Hair Boy, or the Green Hat Boy. It's going to be something that I'm going to harp on this entire damn episode. Why doesn't he have a name? He is like the most central character in this dispute, and he never
I didn't even think about that. I didn't even notice it.
Never has a name. He's never mentioned by name. He's Big Tooth Green Hat Guy to me. Bless you, Green Hat Big Tooth Guy. Anyway, continue. Sorry. Why doesn't he have a name?
I didn't even notice they didn't even name him. Oh
He's
my
so
God, you're right.
inconsequential. Anyway, Robotnik's outfit is for the birds, let me tell you.
It's horrifying. I remember watching it. I posted a story on Instagram just watching it, and him, like, I just recorded it off my phone from my computer screen, and he's wearing like this cut off red top with his giant stomach hanging out, with a hairy stomach. You see his hair all over the place, and then he's wearing these red shorts. Then they're very high, and so you can see his legs. He honestly looks like, what if a hairy fat guy
Yeah, he looks ridiculous.
Decided to dress up as a stripper Santa Claus.
Looks ridiculous.
That's the only way I can describe it. How bad did it mortify you?
A lot. There were a couple things that took me from this scene. So first and foremost, his cheerleading squad, which is cross-dressing, by the way,
Yes.
were they wearing Team Rocket uniforms? They had this
They kinda
stylized
looked it,
red
yeah.
R on the front. I first thought of Jesse and James. So we have Team Rocket
Prepare for
cheerleading
trouble.
squad, yeah, and make it double. I'll say this. I bleached for the uniform, but Long John Baldry's performance as Robotnik in the AOSTH series was top-notch on every single episode. He actually was a country singer away from the voice acting side of things, but I always loved his performance in the show. This one, he didn't get featured enough, and he's the central villain.
I
Again,
know, right?
in a storyline sense, this thing was all over the place. I bleached, certainly. And the one more point on Robotnik while I've got it. So,
By all means.
in Japan, he's a happy, fat egg. If you look at any of the concept art for him, he is a happy, joyous, round guy with a goofy smile and these little tiny reflective glasses, like a pince-nez, I think is what it's called in French. Robotnik's eyes being black is a choice made by Sega of America. If you look back to the Sonic 2 box art, his eyes, my thought and my interpretation was always that they're a shadow of what his eyes would be because it's kind of that dark background. But it was taken literally for the shows. So he has these black eyes with the red, the red interiors, which is, it's just to make him more menacing than he actually is, which he's not. And that was the point of the character. He's not really that menacing. That's why in Japan he's a happy fat egg. And in this, it just kind of comes across as strange. He's supposed to be this really menacing villain, but he's totally not.
It's funny because I actually prefer the more menacing Robotnik from the gritty Saturday morning Sonic, because I think Robotnik is a lot better name than Eggman. I don't know why they decided. I mean, you might know this. Was Eggman always his name, or did it get switched over later on?
In Japan, it was always Eggman because, again, if you look at that concept art, he is egg-shaped and always was. So the switch happened in Sonic Adventure 1, where he was introduced as Dr. Robotnik to start the game, but then Sonic says, oh, look, it's a giant talking egg, and therefore he was called Eggman from there on. So that was where the switch happened.
I still prefer Robotnik.
Localized.
I think Robotnik's a better name. I just can't. I don't know what it is. I just think Robotnik is a better name. Maybe it's just nostalgia, though.
More menacing.
And I still can't I can't get over the fact that the voice actor's name, like you mentioned before, for Robotnik, his name is Long John. Long John Baldry.
Yep.
What a fantastic name for anybody.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, the voice actor of Sonic is Jaleel White. For those in the 90s, you might know him better as Urkel from Family Matters.
Yep.
Which I remember when I first found out about that, I was blown away. I'm like, oh my God, Urkel is Sonic the Hedgehog?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Because as a kid, you don't realize how much Jaleel White was throwing on that voice to be Urkel.
Yep.
Like, that was so not him as a person, and it was just, it's crazy.
That's the first voice I remember. Sorry, that's the first voice I remember Sonic as.
No, go for it.
He was always edgy.
As Jaleel White.
Yeah, and the thing was, I remember this from one of the documentaries on the Sat AM DVDs, is that he had to record separately than anybody else on the show because he was still going to high school at the time. So I think everyone else was based up in Canada, and he was the only one that had to record separately to actually get an education and live as an actor. So that was one little discrepancy during his time as Sonic.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
I am a walking encyclopedia of useless Sonic knowledge.
So the storyline, the reason why Robotnik / Eggman wants to become Santa, and he goes through all that effort to create a robotic Santa, so that way the robotic Santa can be like, I'm done with this. Now Robotnik Claus is Santa Claus. The whole reason for that is because he wants to get all the presents. And he switches it up. He's like, this year for Christmas, you're all going to give Santa presents, not the other way around like it normally is. And understandably, what did you call him? Green hat, weird teeth boy. Green hat, weird teeth boy is understandably pissed off about it because he was expecting. He punches him in the stomach. Did you see?
I did.
He gets so upset and he just socks Robotnik right in the stomach. Oh,
called him a very fine kid, which I don't think would go by in today's day and age.
One of my favorite things, he brought up Robotnik's cheerleaders when he's making that announcement of becoming Santa Claus or Robotnik Claus, and it's his two henchmen, Scratch and Grounder. And one of my favorite quotes from it is they're constantly arguing with each other who's better at cheering, and I don't remember which one says it, but I wrote the quote down. It goes, "I boo your cheers."
That was Scratch.
It was Scratch. I boo your cheers, and it like what a weird. I don't know. Just the trash talk game is strong on this one.
Yes, it's funny when you talk about them. So my mom, was always annoyed at anything I ever watched growing up, and I think this show in particular was the one that she probably hated the most because of Scratch and Grounder.
I could see why. Those voices are very grating.
Yes, my mom always called the voices that she hated, she called them the neighbors, and it wasn't in reference to neighbors we had. It was just like the worst neighbors you'd ever expect, the most annoying people ever. So now that I'm older, I definitely agree that those voices are grating, and I wanted to punch them every time they came on screen. But I digress.
So Robotnik, one of my favorite plot points is like part of Robotnik's plan is that he basically splits up the kids from their parents, and he basically forces the kids to somehow help, like work in a robot factory, like. Green hat, big teeth boy, is forced to work in a robot factory, and Robotnik has those robots working on his house, and he's trying to get them to build thousands of chimneys, so that way every resident of Robotropolis or whatever, is it Robotropolis?
Yes.
Every resident of Robotropolis can drop presents down each chimney instead of just like showing up at his house. And just, I don't know. I thought that was I thought that was a really funny idea. Like, that's something that you would hear in like an improv comedy show where someone tries to take over being Santa and they just build 1,000 chimneys. That's something that you would hear in an improv comedy show, not in something that someone wrote down as a legitimate story.
I think it's also home to the best line in the entire special. I'm going to try and come up with it myself. I hope you'll drop it in there and compare the two, but it's, I want more chimneys, more. So that was the best line in the entire special, is that he wanted more chimneys. I am not Long John Baldry, but I have it on all caps in my notes. I want more chimneys, more. And that reminded me, in between scenes, especially in that part, what the hell is up with the weird transitions from scene to scene in this show? They're so out of place. It's so jarring how quick the transition is, and then suddenly we're somewhere else. Like, there's no scene setting. It's so rushed. This entire thing fits in 20 minutes, and it doesn't fit in 20 minutes. But the transitions just take you and slam you against the wall. It's so grating.
They cram so much story into this 20-minute into this 20-minute episode, and there's these giant plot points that normally you'd want them to be able to breathe a little bit. The one towards the end, without not to jump too far ahead, but it made me laugh, is when Sonic does eventually rescue Santa. Santa laments that there's no way that they're going to be able to get the presents back in time and save Christmas. So Sonic is just kind of walking around, and then he starts lamenting that he can't get Sally any presents now because after she got him this ring, and then Santa sees that ring, he goes, hey, I actually wrote down the quote that Santa said because I thought it was ridiculous. He goes, "By jingle." He goes, "By jingle." And he says, and he basically tells him this whole story about this is apparently some sacred ring, and then Sonic has to complete some trials. And the only reason Santa knows all about this is because the cave he was imprisoned in by Robotnik had cave paintings that foretold of this power of this ring, and he has to get supersonic speed by completing these trials.
I have two thoughts. First,
yes,
I'm an unabashed Tails fan, so my favorite Tails line this entire thing was, "I wish we stopped for my long johns." I don't know why that was cute as hell, but it was. Secondly, on their way to rescue Santa, there is like this cannon thing that comes out of the ice, and it starts shooting ice things at them. The first thing I thought of was on like the 5th level of Halo 2. Now that we're talking about sacred rings, there's that wraith on the other side of the bridge. And the bridge comes out, and you only have a ghost to try and destroy the wraith. I don't know why my mind went to this random wraith in this random Halo 2 level, but that's exactly where it went. Except Sonic makes destroying it much easier.
The volley of the icicle bombs from Sonic kind of reminds you of like the Wraith bombs that they're showing. The volley that the Wraith explosive things or whatever.
Also, are North Pole people Egyptians? Like, he called them pictographs, but they were hieroglyphics. I mean, what the hell is up with this?
I just don't understand why it was a show that the storyline so far made sense. Robotnik, I mean, it's dumb, but it makes sense. You know, Robotnik takes over Christmas. He wants to get all the presents. Not very diabolical plan. He's an asshole, but it's not very diabolical. And so he kidnaps Santa, and he puts him in this cave, and Santa sees these, like you said, do they really call it hieroglyphics?
They call them pictographs. Santa called them pictographs, but they sure as hell looked like hieroglyphics to me. And, you know, random ring is the answer to everything that Sonic got last year.
Yeah.
Wow. What a deus ex machina there, you know? Like, it couldn't have been anything else. No, it's this random lightning bolt ring that's never used or referenced ever again.
And then the trials that are shown in this, which they don't even show all the trials. They show one trial he has to complete, and it's climbing a mountain, which Sonic does in a second because he's fast as hell. And the rest of it, he does a fucking decathlon.
I have so many questions.
He rides a snowboard, he rides a bike, he goes swimming, but while riding the bike underwater. He does so many different things. And the whole thought in my head, I'm like, they crammed like one of those cliche ancient legend stories into this episode within the last 4 minutes of the show.
Yeah. I have so many questions. As you said, it's a training montage with 4 minutes left. That's basically where they were at. So you have the resolution of the conflict that you have to fit probably in about a 2-minute span, which we'll get to. But here are my thoughts about this whole thing. First, he's doing the whole snowboard thing, and, you know, Scratch and Grounder are there with a bear trap, which doesn't make any sense. And the bear trap obviously fails because it does. But why is there a hang glider that's just floating there? Where did it come from? Why is it floating there? I don't think hang gliders float, first and foremost. And why is this tiny board that Sonic drops from maybe about 100 feet smash Scratch and Grounder into 1,000 fucking pieces? I don't think that's how physics works.
I was like, that's one heavy as hell snowboard.
Yeah.
destroy 2 robots. And the crazy thing is, the only reason Sonic knows where Santa is at is that he meets Green Hat Big Teeth Boy after he escaped from the factory. Exposition Teeth Boy decides to tell him the whole thing of what's happening, and then Scratch and Grounder show up and try to take him out, and then he tricks him in like this ridiculous method by dressing up as something else, and he tricks him into telling them where Santa is, and then of course they're like, oh, well, guess where the dummies now,
Yeah.
and then that's how it leads
Wah,
to Santa.
wah.
That was the only section we didn't cover in the middle there, so I
Right.
wanted to make sure we did. The entire month of December here on Still Loading has been sponsored by Geek Guilt. Geek Guilt is the online store for all of your geeky needs, from clothing to costumes to home living to the video games themselves. Geek Guilt is worth checking out. And for all you Mandalorian fans, you can pick up a Baby Yoda mug for $16 with the promo code MANDO. That is MANDO. And Geek Guilt has also been nice enough to sponsor a second giveaway here on Still Loading. If you go to my Instagram page at Still Loading Pod, you will see a post for this giveaway. Like that post, follow me, and tag a friend in the comments, and you will be entered to win 5. Yes, that's right, 5 Nintendo Switch games. What are these games, you ask? When you enter, you have a chance to win a copy of Zelda Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion 3, Super Mario Party, Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze, and Mario Tennis Aces. And if Geek Guild wasn't already awesome enough, they're going to match that giveaway by donating another copy of those 5 games to the Bit by Bit Foundation. For those who don't know or don't listen to the plugs at the end of each episode, the Bit by Bit Foundation is a non-profit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of children receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So this is incredibly awesome of Geek Guilt, so make sure you go check them out at geekguilt.com. The last giveaway, you could only get 1 entry per person. This is only for the listeners of the podcast. If you send me a message on Instagram with this giveaway post in it, you will receive a second entry. This giveaway will end at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, December 28th, 2020. Once again, that is Monday, December 28th, 2020. So make sure you hop over to my Instagram and enter. You're right, though. Where did the hang glider come from? Where did all that stuff is
Yeah.
just sitting there.
The bike was just there. And have you ever ridden a bike in the snow? I'm pretty sure it doesn't
hard.
work like that. He made it look effortless. Or
he
riding a
is Sonic
bike
the Hedgehog.
underwater. Yeah, I guess
Gotta go
so.
fast.
Yeah, random bike in the snow. Sure. Random hang glider. Got it. And not to mention that entire sequence you were talking about earlier was like a freaking authoritarian takeover. Like, they go into this toy store, there's nothing left, and Tails is like, oh, all the presents are gone, sad face, and they look outside and there's this huge dumpster full of everything, and then, the big gag in AOSCH was that Sonic always dressed up in some gag uniform to trick everyone, and it's like, he's freaking blue, do you not understand? But I guess, in that sense, in the show, it wouldn't have stood out as much. But everyone in the show this time around is human. I have so many questions. And none of them will be answered because this thing aired like 24 years ago or whatever. So it's been a while.
It has.
But he goes through the decathlon, as you said, and earns this supersonic speed, which I thought he had already. Why did he have to get it again?
That's what I thought too, and I think it was so anticlimactic when he completed the decathlon. He finished it, and then it's just kind of like, okay.
I have it now.
It wasn't like he suddenly started glowing or like something exploded and he's like, oh, look at this power. It was just nothing happened. The Santa Claus is like, oh, you have the power now, but now there's no time to get all the presents. That's millions of presents. And when he says millions of presents, when Sonic decides just to go and run and get it, there's like 30 in Robotnik's house. What happened to this million? Real quick, and speaking of Robotnik's house, I meant to say this. At 11:31, you see Robotnik's house, and there is like chimneys all over it. Well, you see the front door of his house, and this is right when Robotnik finds out that Sonic knows the location of Santa, and he's going to go rescue it. So at 11 minutes and 31 seconds in the episode, there's a chimney hanging at the front, like sideways off the wall of the house, and it just looks like a dick. It's just hanging and drooping down. It looks like a dick. I wrote down the timestamp because I was just so surprised they snuck a dick joke into this.
Go and look for yourself.
11:31. By the way, everyone, you can watch this. I mean, granted, this is in November we're recording this. Hopefully it's still available by then. It's on YouTube, though. You can watch it on YouTube.
That's where I saw it.
I watched it on Tubi, which is, by the way, completely free. Not an ad, but you don't even have to sign up. You can just go to the website and search for stuff. You just might have to deal with commercials. But yeah, no, it looks like a dick, which I thought was kind of ridiculous and kind of funny. It was just one of the most ridiculous things. So Sonic ends up saving Christmas, and
it took him 3 seconds.
Yeah, it took him like 3 seconds, and Santa then wants to like stop being Santa Claus because Sonic's better at it, and they call it Sonic Claus. And I just thought that was not a good joke. Come on now. The whole thing just felt so anticlimactic to me.
It was. It ended. What conflict was there ultimately? I mean, you go through this. It needed to be twice as long as it was. Let's be honest. It needed to be about 42 minutes.
I think it was just the right length. They just should have taken stuff out.
Yes.
I don't need more of this.
It didn't need the super ring subplot. That definitely did not need to be. And then you could cut out the conversation with the bird, which lasted a minute. Into the episode. That lasted for far too long. You didn't have to, have that guy lose his house. Like, that hit a bit too close to home for people
I forgot
out there
about that.
Who can't afford. He said, I sold my furniture. There's nothing in there anymore just to make ends meet. And they're like, oh, well, fuck you. We're taking your house now. And they literally take his house.
There's so much in this show, this episode, that's just wild. Real quick, because I think it'd be good to like kind of, now that we kind of went through the story, we can go back through and just kind of like talk about some weird things like that we didn't get to in our notes. Because I mean, the story is relatively simple. It's not like you can really stretch that much out of it. But one thing I will say, that the final line of it was, Sonic says, "An extremely Merry Christmas for every year of your life." And I thought that was slightly hostile to the kids. I don't know why, but like, why not just say Merry Christmas? No, an extremely Merry Christmas for every year of your life. And it just sounded like
it was a command.
Yeah, it was bizarrely. It was almost like a threat. Like, you're not going to last that much longer, so have a very extremely Merry Christmas for every year of your life. I don't know why, but it was not heartwarming the way most Christmas episodes should be. It was more menacing, and it wasn't really, but it was definitely not the same warm tone as the rest of it.
I agree. I would say it would have been better served with a Sonic and Tails hug, and like them wishing the Christmas greetings to each other. I think that would have been really nice, or like, hey, Tails, I got you this. But no, it kind of ends with, hey, Sally, I got you all of this, and disrespects the woman again by flopping about 15 presents on her, and her only line is, that's her only line. And Green Hat Kid remains nameless. God bless him.
Green Hat Big Teeth Kid had a line. His first line of it is that he sees Santa on TV and he goes, he knows Santa's coming on TV. He goes, when does Santa coming on TV? Do I get to tell him what I want? I'm like, this kid doesn't know how television works. You don't talk to, especially back in the 90s. It's not like there was like video chat back then. I thought that I don't know. The kid just doesn't know how TVs work, apparently. And then the other thing, that one of the biggest questions I wanted answered, regardless of like what you were saying, like why are there suddenly humans in Robotropolis when they didn't used to be? Why is any of this really happening? It's a ridiculous plot. Where does Sally get the ring? Like, that's a big ring. Like, that ring just gave Sonic super speed that saved the world, and it's never addressed where she got it from. She just gave it to him. Like, where did she dig it up?
clearly
Did she keep it in a trunk somewhere and just brought it out? Was it her grandfather's and she loves Sonic, so she's passing it along to her future husband? I don't know. I don't think
it clearly came from those North Pole Egyptians. That's clearly where it came from.
I totally thought you were about to say North Pole gypsies.
No. No, it's the North Pole Egyptians and their pictographs and their hieroglyphics. You know, that's
I
clearly
believe
where
they're
it came
called
from.
North Pole gypsies.
Yes, Egyptians.
The North Pole gypsies. It's just such a ridiculous idea. I just don't understand where, like, why didn't they answer that? They answered other stuff. Another note I had was the intro song. One, do you remember? I can't think of the classical music that it's that dun 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 dun
Yep.
dun dun.
In the
dun.
Hall of the Mountain King.
That's what it
the
is. I
name of
could
that.
not
Yep.
think of it.
And that was the intro song for the original series, but they
Oh, okay.
Christmasified it for this wonderful Christmas special.
Yes. And in that intro, they showed the highlights of the entire episode before you saw it, like the way Sonic dispatches of that cannon, the way he saves Christmas and steals it from Robotnik, or Robotnik Claus. You see clips of it all in the intro episode. I'm like, why bother showing it then? If you're just going to show everything in the intro 30-second song.
It's kind of forward thinking, though, Josh, in the way that some content creators now at the beginning of their shows put a highlight. And I know this was a criticism of a show on YouTube called Good Mythical Morning, where they got rid of their catchphrase to begin the show and, you know, put something maybe 10 minutes into their episode, which spoiled like the entire episode. So it was strangely very forward thinking. I don't know
You're
how
giving
they
them
did
way
it.
too much credit.
I know I am, but I'm trying to save it here, Josh. I'm trying. No, it's an interesting question, like why they would do that when they never did it in, again, any of the other, how many episodes were there? Too many. 65 episodes plus the pilot and the Christmas special. So 66 of the 67 episodes did not have this forward-thinking preview thing. So take that for what it's worth.
The last note that I still had that I didn't talk about was I thought Santa's glasses were weird. You know how, like you were saying before, how Eggman has those weird circle, like, bottle glasses?
Yeah.
Santa was wearing them this whole episode. It's like they just swapped it over from what the Japanese Robotnik / Eggman looks like, and they just put it on this Santa, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, just the glasses just looked very strange to me. And he did take them off at one point, I think when he said "Bye Jingle," but I don't remember anymore.
By jingle. Also,
I'm going to use that
very-
in my everyday life.
yeah, a very strange death quote for the robot, like the roboticized Santa. I forget what the quote was, but I just remember it was like, and then he like melted.
It was really
and
morbid,
decomposed.
wasn't it?
It was, and he decomposed into nothingness. Like it was really actually kind of sad. Or was it? I don't know.
I thought that too. I didn't write down the quote, but I thought the same thing too. It was just really. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that makes you uncomfortable in this episode. Robotnik's outfit is just incredibly uncomfortable to look at. The fact that they stole that guy's house,
Yeah.
just ripped it right off. The fact that they technically tried to enslave kids to work in a robot factory.
Yeah.
Hence, green hat, big teeth boy.
Why was he
Just-
the special
he-
one? Like, why did he have to escape? He did nothing except spout exposition. And I think the same way about Tails. I think my boy was shafted. The only thing he did was push everyone out of the way once when freaking tanks were going through the city like it's freaking World War II or something like that. Like, that's the only thing Tails did in this episode, and I stand by that, and I hate the fact, like, why was he even in it then? He made the Long John's
It's-
joke, and that's all he did.
There's a lot of, and especially in old cartoons like that, especially with cartoons based off of video games, there's a lot of need for fan service where they have to include a character because this is part of the game, even if it doesn't serve the story. I always hate it when shows or movies do stuff like that. I'm a huge James Bond fan, and there's a couple James Bond movies where he's almost superfluous to the plot, But you don't want to see that in a James Bond movie. You know, like he's supposed to be one of the main guys. But now I think Goldfinger, actually, for the most part, he's almost superfluous to the plot. Like up until the very end where he defeats the bad guy, everything that would have happened up to the very end would have happened whether he was there or not.
Right.
It's kind of ridiculous. I guess the whole movie is kind of playing behind the eight ball until he figures out how to beat the guy, but it's still kind of silly. And it's that way in this show where a lot of characters were introduced for no, like Sally didn't need to be a part of this episode.
No.
Technically,
No.
you could have literally just had Sonic get. You know how Tails could have been more involved? It would have been a gift for Tails. Tails
Yeah.
and Sonic could have given gifts to each other, and Tails could have given him the ring.
Ended with the hug. Perfect little zoom out moment. Gotta love it. A point on my boy. His voice is different in this special than it was in any of the other 66 episodes of the show. He was voiced by Chris Turner in this episode and not Christopher Welch. The performance is actually better, I think, than Christopher Welch's. Fun fact. But the thing I don't
It's kind of
understand,
funny, actually.
there's a lot about what Sega of America did in terms of the character designs. For whatever reason, Sonic looked a lot edgier. I guess they were trying to pander to being edgy and cool. But why is Tails brown? Why is he brown? I know
What color
foxes
is he
aren't
norm-
supposed.
what was-
He's
was he
supposed to be
normally?
orange. He's supposed to be in today's media. He's now yellow orange. But he looks weird when he's brown. When his concept art is that he is this like orangish, yellowish tint. So it never made sense to me, why he was brown. But whatever. They did my boy wrong. Bless up, Tails. That was my big question, was why was he brown?
A lot of Sega of America back then, they were trying to compete with Nintendo, and their marketing strategy was that to be edgy. Like, their whole idea was, let's see how we can outcool Nintendo. That's why the Genesis they were trying to appeal to an older audience. Nintendo tried to stick to their younger demographic, and Sega's like, well, we can get everybody. And generally, if you try to appeal to the teenagers, what do little kids always want to be like? Their older siblings. They want to be like the older kids, so they try to kind of give like an edgy look to it, which is why Sonic is a lot edgier in the US than it was in Japan. And also, look at their advertising campaign. Their biggest slogan was Genesis does what Nintendo don't.
Yep.
That like their whole thing was all revolving around like, we need to make something with attitude because that's going to sell. Mario is so cutesy. We need something that's so different from that's going to make people think, look how cool this is. And it worked for the most part. Like, well, it did work. What is it? At the height of its sales, I forget where I talked about this before on the podcast, but they went from under 10% of the market of the video game market with the Sega Master System to having just slightly over 50% through the Genesis. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's
big risk
insane.
to bundle Sonic 2 when it came out too. That's the highly anticipated sequel. But nonetheless, so we have names and character designs for all of these characters, but green coat, green hat, weird teeth boy doesn't have a name. I want to know why his mom raised him to be such a punk ass, whiny bitch, basically. He's like, why? What do I want for Christmas? What would you want for Christmas, man? And I was just like, shut up, kid. Seriously, why are you central to the plot? Why couldn't we find this nice child? We got this punk ass bitch, basically, is what we got.
No, like so many 90s cartoons, though, their characters in it were just meant to be obnoxious because I guess that's what they thought kids wanted. Not necessarily obnoxious, but it was so cartoony and bright. They're bright voices. Like if Neon Pink was a voice, that's how half of these cartoon characters. That's what half of these cartoon characters are. So it stands out. It's very jarring, and it's what kids are into, I guess. I don't know.
And there was no
90s
Josh.
kids
There
are
was
probably
no
very different
nuance.
than now.
There was no nuance to any of the delivery or it always felt like, and there's actual legitimate criticism to this even in today's animation, where it feels like everyone is talking at the same distance rather than being at a distance, like they're talking from far away, everyone
Yeah.
feels like they're talking to you from here. You know, and in this episode, it never felt like anyone was particularly shouting from a distance. All of the exposition and the conversation was done within like 2 feet of each other, which didn't necessitate the yelling, to be honest. But
No.
there was a lot of
No,
yelling.
it didn't. I mean, those people were literally giving stage performances meant for like people all the way in the back row that can't see you.
Yes.
But everyone can see you because it's a TV show. It's a cartoon. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts on this wonderful holiday special before we wrap this all up?
Wonderful? Are you giving it more
you know.
credit than... Okay, so my thought on it is this. Good effort. I know that we will disagree on the fact of its length. I felt that if it needed to fulfill all of its plot points, it needed to be twice as long, that we can have a legitimate, perhaps lore behind the ring itself. Perhaps give it a good design, give it some mythos, give it something, you know, if you give them a little something for maybe some of the older viewers to get sucked in, that might bring them in. The conflict, resolving in 3 seconds was very disappointing. I felt the main villain in Dr. Robotnik was there for about 10 seconds on screen. He's the main villain. It really didn't do anything for me. There weren't enough catchphrases from Sonic, like got a speed keyed and all that good stuff. He had maybe 2, and that's like Jaleel White's Sonic's thing. He only had a couple in there. Tails was superfluous. Sally was superfluous. That poor guy that had his house taken away from him.
It was just meant to show cruelty.
Yeah, too many plot conveniences with the hang glider, the bike, the snowboard being super heavy. That there's this North Pole Egyptians thing that is not explained upon, that they're just a thing. And Long John Baldry is the GOAT.
I really like him as Robotnik. I really do.
He's the man. And this was a fitting thud of a series finale for Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. It deserved to die on this episode. It was definitely not my favorite. There are a lot of those episodes that are a lot better than this, so it does not get a must-watch from me. I am sorry. But watch it out of pure painful pleasure. Just because we've gone over this and you probably have a ton of questions. Do it anyway. You might regret it afterwards, but it's 20 minutes that you'll just be like, what am I watching? That's my thought.
I honestly, I enjoyed it, but a little bit ironically, it's not something I would go out of my way. But at the same time, watching it was fun. It was just fun out of how bad it was. It was definitely an ironic level of fun. It's just not. It's just so. It's that thing where it's so bad it's entertaining. It's just so ridiculous. It's so over the top. It's the same thing with like a lot of those old video game cartoons from the 90s and late 80s and whatnot. It's cheap animation. They tried, sort of. I honestly wonder, like, because I don't mean to disparage any of the people that worked on it, because it still is a lot of work to put any of this type of stuff together. Like, I understand it's cheap animation, but that's not to say, like, it wasn't difficult. Even cheap animation's hard to do. And
the animation in this one was better than any of the other previous episodes in this series. I remember putting it's not completely choppy as hell, but it's at least better quality. The renderings and the fluidity of it was better than any of the other episodes in this series.
I think it is worth people's watch in general. I don't know why. I found it fun. Like, I'd watch it again just for a laugh. Like, it's only 20 minutes. It's something that you could throw on in the background and just kind of laugh at its ridiculousness. As with like pretty much any of those old cartoons. Like I used to put on the Super Mario Brothers Super Show just because it's ridiculous. I would have it on the background while I was doing stuff because I would want to have something that's kind of like this warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feeling. Even though I didn't watch that as a kid, but it kind of puts you back in that 90s mentality, which is something I'm always looking for as a 90s kid. All right, so
it's funny you mentioned that. Actually, quick useless trivia. I was actually looking this up today, and unrelated completely. Captain Lou Albano, who I believe was an ex-pro wrestler, played Mario on that show, and there was an anti-drug PSA where he's like, "You'll go to hell before you die if you take drugs," and that was aired on TV as an anti-drug PSA. So Captain Lou Albano, may you rest in peace.
What a champ.
But he said,
That's
"You'll go to
insane.
hell before you die," to children to tell them not to take drugs.
That's one hell of a message to kids.
But
Oh my
generally
gosh.
speaking, I agree with you. It's definitely nonsense to put in the background to laugh at and laugh with at some points. Especially, it got the best laugh out of me at the "I want more chimneys." That
Yeah.
line was gold. And I also, before we close this out, we need to give Green Coat, Green Hat, Weird Teeth Kid a name.
Oh, Lester.
I was going with Charles.
That's a
Lester
lot more
Charles. Lester Charles.
All right, Lester Charles is his name. I like that.
Yes. Also, I'm glad that the strides that women in animation have gotten since, because all Sally got in this episode was a gasp and a lot of material things. So
I think it's just so frustrating because she's such a strong character in the Saturday morning cartoon. Like one of the first earliest episodes is about her finding her father in a prison, and she's leading them, and she's like a tech wizard, and she can like hack through stuff, and she's a badass.
she's a badass. Yeah. We
And
said
what
that at the same
happened in
time.
this? It's insane to me. Like I don't understand how you could be like, yeah, no, let's turn her into this when she was already so awesome in the other cartoon. It's ridiculous to me. But okay, so that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Jordan, where can the good people find you online, or is there anything you would like to promote?
Nothing to promote, really. You can find me on Twitter at JCKVoice, on Instagram at Jordan Coons. That's Kuhns. I'm not really that interesting on social media, but I try to be witty every once in a while. It's funny. I'm glad that you brought me on for this topic in particular, because I seem to be a useless dispensary of useless Sonic knowledge. I'm sure there was more I could dig up here, including one of the hits that Long John Baldry had. If you're looking for a song for of his that is actually one of my favorite songs in general, was one that he recorded back in 1967 called "Let the Heartaches Begin." It is such a poignant song, and his voice is incredible. So
Good
that's
to
the
know.
one thing I want people to go out and listen to is "Let the Heartaches Begin." At what point at the end he ad-libs, and it sounds exactly like his Robotnik voice, which it's hard to kind of separate the two when you've heard it. But again, it's been fun, certainly recapping something that I hadn't really given a critical eye to before. So, Lester Charles, thank you for your
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, God bless you. Merry Christmas. Have a extremely Merry Christmas for the rest of the years of your life.
I was gonna use that to close it. No, it's
Close
okay.
it. No,
It's
no,
okay.
no, no, no. You can cut that.
No. We'll be good. As per usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. You can reach out to me on any of those, or you can also email me, stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. You can also go to my website, stillloadingpodcast.com. If you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. Probably the most beneficial is just giving it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you are using. You can also go to Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month will help grow the show. Check out the Podbeard Network, the network I'm a part of. You can check out all the great shows that it offers. And the most important plug I have is the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a non-profit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of children receiving inpatient care at hospitals. If you want to support them, please go to their website, bitbybitfoundation.org, and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode of the Still Loading Podcast. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Happy New Year. Well, I guess I have a couple episodes beforehand, so not Happy New Year yet, but Happy Holidays, and have an extremely Merry Christmas for every year of your life.